Self-signed certificate. A digital certificate that has been signed by the entity that issued it, rather than by the CA. Self-signed certificate. Certificate signing request. A base 64 ASCII file that a subject sends to a CA to get a certificate. Certificate signing request. Common name. A X500 attribute expressing a host or username, also used as the subject identifier for a digital certificate. Common name. Subject alternative name, SAN. A field in a digital certificate allowing a host to be identified by multiple names or subdomains. Subject alternative name, SAN. Wildcard domain. In PKI, a digital certificate that will match multiple subdomains of a parent domain. Wildcard domain. Certificate revocation list, CRL. A list of certificates that were revoked before their expiration date. Certificate revocation list, CRL. Online Certificate Status Protocol, OCSP. Allows clients to request the status of a digital certificate to check whether it is revoked. Online Certificate Status Protocol, OCSP. Key Management System. In PKI, procedures and tools that centralizes generation and storage of cryptographic keys. In PKI, procedures and tools that centralizes generation and storage of cryptographic keys. Key Management System. In entropy, a measure of disorder. Cryptographic systems should exhibit high entropy to better resist brute force attacks. Entropy. Pseudo RNG, PRNG. The process by which an algorithm produces numbers that approximate randomness without being truly random. Pseudo RNG. True random number generator, TRNG. A method of generating random values by sampling physical phenomena that has a high rate of entropy. True random number generator. Trusted Platform Module, TPM. Specification for secure hardware-based storage of encryption keys, hashed passwords, and other user and platform identification information. Trusted Platform Module, TPM. Hardware Security Module. An application for generating and storing cryptographic keys. This sort of solution may be less susceptible to tampering and insider threats than software-based storage. Hardware Security Module. Application Programming Interface, API. Methods exposed by a script or program that allow other scripts or programs to use it. For example, an API enables software developers to access functions of the TCP and the IP network stack under a particular operating system. Application Programming Interface. Secure Enclave. CPU extensions that protect data stored in system memory so that an Untrusted process cannot read it. Secure enclave. Escrow. In key management, the storage of a backup key with a third party. Escrow. Data at rest. Information that is primarily stored on specific media rather than moving from one medium to another. Data at rest. Data in transit or data in motion. Information that is being transmitted between two hosts, such as over a private network or the internet. Data in transit or data in motion. Data in use or data in processing. Information that is present in the volatile memory of a host, such as system memory or cache. Data in use or data in processing. Encryption levels. Target for data at rest encryption ranging from more granular, file or row/record, to less granular, volume/partition, disk or database. Encryption levels. Transport communication encryption. Encryption scheme applied to data in motion such as WPA, IPsec, or TLS. Transport communication encryption. Key exchange. Any method by which cryptographic keys are transferred among users, thus enabling the use of cryptographic algorithm. Key exchange. Hash-based message authentication code, HMAC. A method used to verify both the integrity and authenticity of a message by combining a cryptographic hash of the message with a secret key. Hash-based message authentication code, HMAC. Perfect forward secrecy, PFS. A characteristic of transport encryption that ensures if a key is compromised, the compromise will only affect a single session and not facilitate recovery of plain text data from other sessions. Perfect forward secrecy. Diffie-Hellman. A cryptographic technique that provides secure key exchange. Diffie-Hellman. Ephemeral. In cryptography, a key that is used within the context of a single session only. Ephemeral. SALT. A security countermeasure that mitigates the impact of pre-computed hash table attacks by adding a random value to each plaintext input. SALT. Key stretching. A technique that strengthens potentially weak input for cryptographic key generation, such as passwords or passphrases created by people against brute force attacks. Key stretching. Blockchain. A concept in which an expanding list of transitional records listed in a public ledger is secured using cryptography. Blockchain. Open public ledger. Distributed public record of transactions that underpins the integrity of blockchains. Open public ledger. Obfuscation. A technique that essentially hides or camouflages code or other information so that it is harder to read by unauthorized users. obfuscation. Stenography, a technique for obscuring the presence of a message, often by embedding information within a file or other entity. Steganography. Data masking, a de-identification method where generic or placeholder labels are substituted for real data while preserving the structure or format of the original data. Data masking. Tokenization, a de-identification method where a unique token is substituted for real data. Tokenization. Factors. In authentication design, different technologies for implementing authentication such as knowledge, ownership / token, and biometric / inherence. These are characterized as something you know, have, or are. Factors. Personal identification number, PIN. A number used in conjunction with authentication devices such as smart cards, as the PIN should be known only to the user. Loss of the smart card should not represent a security risk. Personal identification number. Password best practices. Rules to govern secure selection and maintenance of knowledge factor authentication secrets such as length, complexity, age, and reuse. Password best practices. Rules to govern secure selection and maintenance of knowledge factor authentication secrets such as length, complexity, age, and reuse. Password best practices. Account policies. A set of rules governing user security information such as password expiration and uniqueness, which can be set globally. Account policies. Password manager. Software that can suggest and store site and app passwords to reduce risk from poor user choices and behavior. Most browsers have a built-in password manager. Password manager. Multi-factor authentication, MFA. An authentication scheme that requires the user to present at least two different factors as credentials. For example, something you know, something you have, something you are, something you do, and somewhere you are. Specifying two factors is known as 2FA. Multi-factor authentication, MFA. Biometric authentication. An authentication mechanism that allows a user to perform a biometric scan to operate an entry or access system. Physical characteristics stored as a digital data template can be used to authenticate a user. Typical features used include facial pattern, iris, retina, fingerprint pattern, and signature recognition. Biometric authentication. False rejection rate. A biometric assessment metric that measures the number of valid subjects who are denied access. False rejection rate, FRR. False acceptance rate, FAR. A biometric assessment metric that measures the number of unauthorized users who are mistakenly allowed access. False acceptance rate, FAR. Crossover error rate. A biometric evaluation factor expressing the point at which FAR, false acceptance rate, and FRR, false rejection rate, meet, with a low value indicating better performance. crossover error rate, CER. Hard authentication token. Authentication token generated by a crypto processor on a dedicated hardware device, as the token is never transmitted directly. This implements an ownership factor within a multi-factor authentication scheme. Hard authentication token. Smart cards. A security device similar to a credit card that can store authentication information, such as a user's private key on an embedded crypto processor. Smart cards. One-time password, OTP. A password that is generated for use in one specific session and becomes invalid after the session ends. One-time password. Security key. Portable HSM with a computer interface such as USB or NFC used for multi-factor authentication. Security key. Soft authentication token. OTP sent to a registered number or email account or generated by an authenticator app as a means of two-step verification when authenticating account access. Soft authentication token. Passwordless. Multi-factor authentication scheme that uses ownership and biometric factors but not knowledge factors. Passwordless. Attestation. Capability of an authenticator or other cryptographic module to prove that it is a root of trust and can provide reliable reporting to prove that a device or computer is a trustworthy platform. Attestation. Permissions. Security settings that control access to objects, including file system items and network resources. Permissions. Discretionary access control. An access control module where each resource is protected by an access control list managed by the resource's owner or owners. Discretionary access control. Mandatory access control, MAC. An access control module where resources are protected by inflexible system redefined rules. Resources and users are allocated a clearance level. Mandatory access control, MAC. Role-based access control, RBAC. An access control model where resources are protected by ACLs that are managed by administrators and that provide user permissions based on job functions. Role-based access control. Group account. A group account is a collection of user accounts that is useful when establishing file permissions and user rights, because when many individuals need the same level of access, a group could be established containing all the relevant users. Group account. Attribute-based access control, ABAC. An access control technique that evaluates a set of attributes that each subject possesses to determine if access should be granted. Attribute-based access control. Rule-based access control. A non-discretionary access control technique that is based on a set of operational rules or restrictions to enforce a least privileges permissions policy. Rule-based access control. Least privilege. A basic principle of security stating that something should be allocated the minimum necessary rights, privileges, or information to perform its role. Least privilege. Provisioning. The process of deploying an account, host, or application to a target production environment. This involves proving the identity or integrity of the resource and issuing it with credentials and access permissions. Provisioning. Deprovisioning. The process of removing an account, host, or application from the production environment. This requires revoking any privileged access that has been assigned to the object. Deprovisioning. Security Identifier, SID. The value assigned to an account by Windows and that is used by the operating system to identify the account. Security Identifier. Group Policy Objects, GPOs. On a Windows domain, a way to deploy per user and per computer settings such as password policy, account restrictions, firewall status, and so on. Group Policy Objects. Geolocation. The identification or estimation of the physical location of an object, such as a radar source, mobile phone, or internet connection computing device. Geolocation. Time of day restrictions. Policies or configuration settings that limit a user's access to resources. Time of day restrictions. Privileged Access Management, PAM. Policies, procedures, and support software for managing accounts and credentials with administrative permissions. Privileged Access Management. NT-LAN Manager Authentication. A challenge response authentication protocol created by Microsoft for use in its products. NT-LAN Manager Authentication. Pluggable Authentication Module, PAM. A framework for implementing authentication providers in Linux. Pluggable Authentication Module. Directory Service. A network service that stores identity information about all the objects in a particular network, including users, groups, servers, client computers, and printers. Directory Service. Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, LDAP. Protocol used to access network directory databases which store information about authorized users and their privileges, as well as other organizational information. Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. Distinguished Name. A collection of attributes that define a unique identifier for any given resource within an X.500-like directory. Distinguished Name. Single Sign-On, SSO. Authentication technology that enables a user to authenticate once and receive authorizations for multiple services. Single Sign-On, SSO. Kerberos. A single sign-on authentication and authorization service that is based on a time-sensitive ticket granting system. Kerberos. Key Distribution Center. A component of Kerberos that authenticates users and issues tickets, tokens. Key Distribution Center, KDC. Ticket Granting Ticket, TGT. In Kerberos, a token issued to an authenticated account to allow access to authorized application servers. Ticket Granting Ticket. Federation. A process that provides a shared login capability across multiple systems and enterprises. It essentially connects the identity management services of multiple systems. Federation. Identity Provider, IDP. In a federated network, the service that holds the user account and performs authentication. Identity Provider, IDP. Security Assertion Markup Language, SAML. An XML-based data format used to exchange authentication information between a client and a service. Security Assertion Markup Language. Simple Object Access Protocol, SOAP. An XML-based web services protocol that is used to exchange messages. Simple Object Access Protocol. Representational. A standardized, stateless architectural style used by web applications for communication and integration. Representational. State Transfer, REST. A standardized, stateless architectural style used by web applications for communication and integration. State Transfer, REST. Open Authorization, OAuth. A standard for federal identity management, allowing resource servers or consumer sites to work with user accounts created and managed on a separate identity provider. Open Authorization. JavaScript Object Notation. A file format that uses attribute value pairs to define configurations in a structure that is easy for both humans and machines to read and consume. JavaScript Object Notation. On-premises network. A private network facility that is owned and operated by an organization for use by its employees only. On-premises network. Logical segmentation. Network topology enforced by switch, router, and firewall configuration, where hosts on one network segment are prevented from or restricted in communicating with hosts on other segments. Logical segmentation. Internet Protocol, IP. Network or Internet Layer Protocol in the TCP/IP suite, providing packet addressing and routing for all higher level protocols in the suite. Internet Protocol. Virtual LAN, VLAN. A logical network segment comprising a broadcast domain established using a feature of managed switches to assign each port a VLAN ID. Even though hosts on two VLANs may be physically connected to the same switch, local traffic is isolated to each VLAN, so they must use a router to communicate. Virtual VLAN. Security zones. An area of the network or of a connected network where the security configuration is the same for all hosts within it. In physical security, an area separated by barriers that control entry and exit points. Security zones. Attack surface. The points at which a network or application receive external connections or inputs/outputs that are potential vectors to be exploited by a threat actor. Attack surface. Port security. Preventing a device attached to a switch port for communicating on the network unless it matches a given MAC address or other protection profile. Port security. MAC filtering. Applying an access control list to a switch or access point so that only clients with approved MAC addresses can connect to it. MAC filtering. A supplicant. In EAP architecture, the device requesting access to the network. Supplicant. Authenticator. A PNAC switch or router that activates EA POL and passes a supplicant's authentication data to an authenticating server, such as a Radius server. Authenticator. Extinguishable authentication protocol. Framework for negotiating authentication methods that enable systems to use hardware-based identifiers such as fingerprint scanners or smart card readers for authentication and to establish secure tunnels through which to submit credentials. Extensible Authentication Protocol, EAP. Remote Authentication Dial-In User Service, Radius. AAA protocol used to manage remote and wireless authentication infrastructures. Remote Authentication Dial-In User Service, Radius. Air-gapped. A type of network isolation that physically separates a host from other hosts or a network from all other networks. Air-gapped. Compute. Processing, memory, storage, and networking resources that allow a host or network applicant to handle a given workload. Compute. Responsiveness. The ability of a system to process a task or workload within an acceptable amount of time. Responsiveness. Scalability. Property by which a computing environment is able to gracefully fulfill its ever-increasing resource needs. Scalability.